Produced by Podcast Architects.
Welcome to the Victory Groove Podcast. I'm your host, Eli Jones, and this is the show that helps you conquer the giants that we all face in life. Just as David faced Goliath confidently, knowing God was on his side, you also can face your giants, knowing that you already hold the keys to victory. We're so pleased today to have a co-host and a dear friend, Ben Wiggins. Ben is the co-owner of Podcast Architects. He's also the host of our Maze Mastercast, and I'm really thrilled to have Ben co-host this show with us today. Ben, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Eli. I appreciate the invite. It's my honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ben is class of 2007 and 2018.
That is correct.
Yeah. Glad to have you. Wonderful. And we are interviewing today another Aggie, fighting Texas Aggie class of 2008, Henry Talamantes. And we are going to visit with Henry today to talk a little bit about some adversities that he's faced and how he has overcome some of those adversities. Henry is a passionate growth and revenue leader who builds, scales, and manages sales and marketing teams at early stage startups in the logistics and prop tech space. He has served as the chief revenue officer for 6 different venture-backed companies, all still active, and cumulatively have raised $100 million plus. And this is on follow-up funding and executing of the go-to-market plans he created. Henry originally hails from the old West Texas town of El Paso, where his mother, father, and grandmother still reside. His sister is completing her medical residency program in Tucson, Arizona. And we're just really happy to have you today, Henry. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good. Well, as you know, this show is all about overcoming adversity. And I tell you, you have certainly done that. I use this, metaphor, if you will, of giants. Right. And so we talk a little bit about how we overcome some of these giants, just as David overcame Goliath. And so when we think about various giants in people's lives and how hard these things can be, how big and scary they can be, it is always refreshing and inspirational to hear from folks who have done it, who've overcome. And Henry, if you don't mind, if you could tell us, what has been your biggest giant to date?
We talked about this at length in our warm-up call. By far, my biggest adversity was overcoming childhood cancer. And it wasn't in the traditional sense where, you're an adult and then you kind of can grasp it. It was a very slow burn for me because I was so young, didn't really understand what was going on. And then it affected me in very, very deep ways for a long, long time because I had to go do these very, very intense, intrusive follow-ups for multiple times a year out of town my entire life, really, until I was 18. And then once a year after that until I was 25. So it took me a long time to wrap my head around it and really more so wrap my head around how much it had affected my mental framework. And it really even changed my personality and my outlook on life.
Yeah. And tell us about kind of the emotions around facing this particular giant. I mean, it's a serious one. Cancer. Mm-hmm. You were, 2 years old? Is that right?
I was 2 when I was diagnosed. Yeah. My uncle was a pediatrician and, who quarterbacked it. It's a long haul, the chemo and the surgery and all the follow-ups. So the emotions were, it was a roller coaster because once I finally, I just recently in adulthood, was able to wrap my head around it. But back then, once I started to just understand how crazy it was, I mean, it had an insane rate of reoccurrence. A lot of the kids die, they get it. Once I started wrapping my head around all that, it was every checkup was we're just waiting for the neurologist to come back in the room. I've had so many scans that when I go to the dentist, I have to tell the dentist because I can't be overexposed anymore to radiation. So it was like, go to the checkup, you're okay. And then like, you got to go to the next one. And it was a lot of up and downs, and a lot of like deep introspection into just life and, morbidity and the finite nature of life. Very early on, I latched onto the phrase memento mori, which was something that was whispered in the Roman general's ear as he returned from battle, to remember that we're all human. So it really gave me a very up close, personal lesson on, nothing is given in this world, and it can all be snatched away.
Yeah. And you shared with us how much it changed your whole perspective on time. And could you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I said, they had a very, very high rate of recurrence, very high rate of fatality. And I've always been a researcher. So as soon as I was old enough, I found all that out. And, you kind of psych yourself out, right? And then had some other instances later on in life. In high school, passed out during a baseball game. And then very recently, I got sick while I was building my first startup. And so every time you go in, the doctors see your chart and they're like, oh my God, dude, like you're going to have surgery like tomorrow, like call the neuros. And then all of a sudden there's 3 neuros in the room, like the surgeon and like everybody, right? And they're calling the old hospital and blah, blah. So I had constant reminders of like, this could be it. And so what that did to me was really, really want to maximize my time here because you never know. So none of us know, but I just had a very personal experience with it. So what that made me do is constantly reevaluate what I want to get out of life and what I'm trying to do while I'm here on Earth. And more lately, now that I've like matured in that vein, it's really helped me in my career and stuff. But early on, I was mad at the world and, some ways mad at God, and it really warped me and led me to risky behavior as a kid and in college, just like, well, I don't care, right? Like, so good and bad for that, for sure.
Henry, then what? So the Tim McGraw song. I went skydiving. I went Rocky Mountain climbing. I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. What pushed you toward a high-powered business career? It's not necessary. Although we talked beforehand about how many entrepreneurs come out of childhood chaos or trauma. Can you describe sort of what the evolution of that was like for you from a cognitive perspective?
There's also the other overlay that mental health for startup founders is kind of coming finally to fruition, and all the VCs are like now talking about how they're founder friendly and all this other stuff they make up. But there's a very high rate of depression and addiction, et cetera, in founders because it's a very stressful gig. So I kind of like doubled up on that. But thankfully by that time I had kind of wrapped my head around it. And so what I really did was, and this is mostly my personality, and I kind of talked about this previously, is that everybody has their own why, and everybody has their own happiness, and everybody has their own joy, So it's important not to say like, I have to do that to be successful or whatever, right? I, from a young age, just really, really enjoy building businesses and running businesses. So that's what I decided to do. And I spoke about this with you guys last time about how a principal was like, no, you have to decide what you want to do, what industry, what do you want to build. And without that, as a kid, they think you're just like doing it for the money. And I don't do it for the money. I do it to build. Like I care less about the money. So once I just focus on what the way I'm going to be the most happy is building businesses and starting businesses, then it all like kind of falls into place. And I talk about that a lot with my employees or with people, friends that ask me, like, how do you do it? How do you get so successful? And I'm like, you don't want to go down this path. Like, it's really hard. What you need to do is find your own happy, find your own goal.
Yeah.
You talked, Henry, when you guested on the Mastercast a couple of years ago about your insight for seeing things in terms of unit economics. You talked about how your brain kind of organizes the world in that way. If someone is looking to build something successful, what do you think there are? Entrepreneurship is a skill. It's not an inborn ability. Some people are born with a more natural inclination towards some of the things that make entrepreneurs. But if you were to say, for me, the entrepreneurship keystone has been customer discovery and market discovery. That was the piece that was missing in my earlier businesses. But if you were to describe a skill that you feel like is most important for people to hone, maybe something that came a little more naturally to you, or maybe something that didn't come a little more naturally, talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship gene, which, as all of us know, is not a gene.
I'd argue that it is. Because there's two things that are the cornerstone of entrepreneurship, and it can all be summed up in one. It's grit. You have to go through so much and swallow so much that most people would never do. So grit is the combination of two things. It's working harder than anybody else wants to work, and an insane propensity for risk. You just have to be able to mentally put it all on the line and just know that it's going to be okay. A lot of entrepreneurship articles, and so I'm huge into behavioral psychology and all that kind of stuff. So I've studied this a lot as far as personality types and stuff like that. So we have this almost, sometimes it hurts us, right? But this almost blindness to risk and this blind thinking that, no, it's just going to work out because I'm going to make it work out. So if you aren't born with that level of risk-taking ability, I don't think that someone less risk-averse could ever do it. Now, the working hard, that you can learn, and something else can drive you towards working hard. That's why there's hedge fund guys and CEOs that make, a ton of money. But there's definitely easier ways to make money than being an entrepreneur. And to do it the entrepreneurial way, I do believe there has to be some sort of personality trait just to be willing to take all the risk and bet on yourself.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is from Angela Duckworth, and that is Grit, the Perseverance.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting if we look at grit and really dig in, there's certain characteristics. So it's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and believe it or not, neuroticism. And that's part of it.
Times, yeah.
Does that fit, Henry? I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. I'm an academic entrepreneur. I love to start things and programs and all these kinds of things. And, there is some risk taken in there. But as I think through those 5 characteristics and really getting to know you, certainly that openness, your ability to even communicate, how you felt as, a youngster, really overcoming that adversity. That conscientiousness, and you've got that bit of extroversion. These are all kind of personality traits too. So when we get into our entrepreneurs born and made, I think it's a little bit of both. I know my dad didn't have any formal training. He was a 6th grade educated person, went off to the Army and learned a trade, and then started his own dry cleaners, kind of like the Jeffersons. So I was telling someone, I was telling someone recently about my dad. Saying, "Are you sure you're looking at the Jeffersons?" Or no, that was his story at least. But when I think about it, this idea of really being born and made, I think that's a very interesting question. I happen to believe it's a little of both.
It's definitely both. Yeah, it definitely is both.
Yeah. Well, as I think about it too, it certainly takes a lot of faith You know, my dad had a lot of faith in starting his own business. He went out and really took some risks, as you're saying. And so tell us a little bit about your faith. How does faith work in for you?
I think that it really molded the whole do something with my time here. So when my parents watch this, they're gonna flip because they always hate when I talk about like my own morality. I mean, my own morbidity, and it's like I accepted that very long ago. And so there's a couple ways I could go, right? Without a moral wrapper, you could say like, well, I'm just gonna be, you know, a gambler or
Right.
whatever, like name it, right? Because
Yeah.
like I don't care, I'm gonna live for the vices of the world, basically, you could say, and I'm just gonna maximize my pleasure because I don't care, I'm gonna go at some point, right? And so I think the reason that I went the other way and I said, okay, I accept my own limited time here on earth, but I'm going to do good by it, was growing up in a very strong um, religious household. My mom and my grandma were very religious, made sure I went through all the Catholic rites, and then they put me in a very, for lack of a better word, strict, but in a good way, Lutheran parochial school where I strengthened my faith through, real learning and research. And so that made me want to do something good with that time. So there was the accepting I had limited time, and then there was the do something good with the time you have because it's a gift given to you, right?
Yeah.
Like every life is a gift. We talk about that a lot as Christians. And so what do you do with that gift? And that's also talked about and framed a lot. And so there's a lot of ways to do that. And, there's a lot of gifts that you're given. And the way that I talk about it to people is that my greatest gift is, I believe, that God gave me these entrepreneurial abilities, the ability to take this risk. I believe it was all a plan for me to do this for His glory, and I believe this is the best use of my time on earth. Some might say I'm chasing my own, desires, but I think that whatever gifts we're giving, that's what you need to double down on because it was intentional. Like that's what.
Right.
So I think that faith has really helped me propel myself forward and say, this is what I was given, and if I don't do something with it, I'm wasting what God gave me. And I talk about that a lot with people, is that if my greatest fear is wasting my time here on earth and not changing the world is an overused thing, but like if I don't create a legacy of some sort, then I will be very ashamed when I meet my maker because I wasted that gift.
Yeah, no, that's, something that comes to mind quite a bit is this, the scripture, faith without works is dead. And, I've just released a brand new book, Run Towards Your Goliaths. And in it, I talk about the natural drum beat in life. There's just a drum beat that's in the background that's going, right? Boom, boom, boom. It's a natural drum beat.
Yeah.
And I believe that God gives us, at times, something that He wants us to do at an appointed time. All right. And it's up to us to act on that moment that He gives us. Right. But there's so many people who miss the beat. They've been called to do something, and because they're fearful, they don't do it. Right. It sounds like you, Henry. You've taken the opportunities that God has given you, and you've been on beat most of your life. And I think part of it is based on your childhood. You don't take time for granted, right? So can you tell us a little bit about this faith without works is dead and this ability to listen to God and move at that appointed time?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to internalize that or come to terms with it. The way I look at it, and this is one of my biggest philosophical questions about faith and stuff like that. It's the complexities of God's plan and free will, right? So free will is fundamental to what we believe, or else we're all just, running on a software. So to me, you have to remember that free will is fundamental. Because if you dig too deep on God has a plan and I'm just going down this predestined plan, then I argue that that leads you to complacency, because then it's very easy emotionally to take the easy way out, because it's like, well, if this is God's plan, so I'm just going to do this. Is it, or are you just taking the easy way out? So that's why I like to think of gifts as more whatever we have physically or intelligence or whatever. That gift was given to you. Now go do something, be somebody with it. Because if you think about it the other way and think like God's plan is linear, then it's like, oh, well, my life's already decided and I'm just going to, volunteer a lot or something. And so I know that's a little rough, but that's how I've framed it in my mind, so that I can motivate myself.
Right. No, I get that. I mean, I think at times when we say that, God is in control, and we know He is, right? And it's up to us to activate our faith, right? And take action, which is what we're talking about. And I do think at times people can sit back and say, well, it's all mapped out. I'm here for the ride, And what I love about you, Henry, is, you just, again, haven't taken anything for granted. You know that God gave you these tools, these gifts, and that you're exercising them. And the good news is there's a spillover effect too, right? So as you're starting these businesses, you're also helping others. There's that spillover effect. Can you tell us about some people in your network who have actually benefited from your starting these different businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that some of my buddies see that there's, a different way out. I've had a few close friends that haven't taken the full jump because, like I said, I mean, it takes a lot. And my very, very close friends have seen what I've lost, which is also a lot on the way there. But some of them have said, like, hey, I started this side business, right? I've been researching this, or I changed careers even. I've had so many interns change majors because I'm just like super open with them and super upfront with them. And probably have one intern a year change majors. I always carry a lot of interns. It's an easy way to help build small early stage startups. And I'm very proud of my interns, and I try to mentor them a lot. I've had 2 go to Goldman in New York on the street, few at Deloitte, few at Bain. So I like to think I had a part in that. And I like to think I have a part in letting people see that careers aren't predestiny and that you need to look outside of the box, because there's a lot of different things that you can do. And that's part of why I'm passionate about getting more involved in Maze.
Yeah. Thank you. What scares you the most, and what brings you the most joy right now?
I think I might have answered this question differently on the call, but now that it came up, truly, like, my deepest seated fear is wasting not only my time, but my God-given gifts. So to just be like, I made it. I have a lot of money now that I sold my first startup, and it's just like, I'm just going to chill, I think that even before I started my career, I always knew that I wanted to make something of the gifts that I was given. And if I didn't do that, and if I was complacent, or even if I failed, then I would fail myself, my family, God, everybody. So I just want to be a good steward of what I was given, because I know I was given a lot. A lot of stuff comes naturally to me that over the years I've realized not everybody has those natural things and personality traits, or whatever you want to call it. So I that's probably my biggest fear is not being a good steward of those gifts.
And what brings you the most joy right now?
To be honest, guys, I've never been happier in life. I love building and starting businesses.
Yeah.
And so right now, like you mentioned, I'm involved in a few different ones, and just being there every day and just like hiring people and getting new customers and expanding and, signing leases and blah, blah, blah. It's just, man, it's very, very fulfilling. What brings me the most joy for sure.
Does a business reach a point, Henry, where it's no longer as exciting for you? Is there a point where you feel like, all right, we've kind of crested a certain specific hump, whatever it may be, and now it's time to let this go into the world, and I'm gonna go help out other businesses that are more nascent, or is it just that, or is that not the case?
That's 100% the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
What is that point for you?
all entrepreneurs, and even more than that, all business people, whatever you want to call them, have a sweet spot where that's what they love to do. And usually that's what they're best at, right? So the way I describe myself and my skill set is I am the best at go-to-market planning. So go-to-market planning is where the product is already developed, and you just need to figure out how to take it to market because, like Mr. Wonderful talks about on Shark Tank, it's not like we're starting a new pizza and it's like, it's now a square and no one knows what we're doing. So you have to educate the market, one, and then once people don't slam the phone on you, then you have to decide, well, shoot, how do we charge for this? And how much do we charge for this? And where do we get in front of these guys? And what should the flyer look like, and et cetera. And so it's a lot of stuff that you take for granted at larger companies, but also for someone else, that's like a super grind, right? It's a lot of like white noise. And for a straight enterprise sales guy, that's all BS, right? Because you're not making money, you're not making an override on that. So there's other guys in my role that only join after they raise or after they're pushing, 10 million top line rev, 100 million top line rev. So everybody has their niche, and my niche is that the building blocks and creating something out of nothing, just like straight up nothing from day one, and taking this idea and making it a reality, and having friends, text me pictures of my trucks in Chicago or San Diego. And it's like, man, I remember when I was in a cockroach infested warehouse, everybody was laughing at me and saying like, no, that's never going to work.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'm a very, very early stage guy because I like doing the building blocks and figuring it out. And then eventually once it becomes methodical and famous and stuff, like it no longer interests me as much.
So you like the band before it gets big?
Yeah.
Well, what's next for you, Henry?
Got a couple things cooking, like always. Always have a couple fires going. I think my passion project right now is we're launching a unique, not tried yet take on alcohol delivery. It's kind of like a ghost kitchen, but for beer and wine and alcohol. And just launched our first store on Monday. It was a long haul because of all the TBC rules and all that. So launched on Monday, doing really well. A bunch of investors are interested in stuff. And so that's really, really exciting for me. Also last week, Maze, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship was in town. Met up with Blake, the new director, and Laura Lee, who I went to college with, actually.
Yeah.
Funny story on
Blake
that.
Petty.
Yeah. And met up with them and trying to get more involved there. So I volunteered a lot when I moved to Dallas with the A&M club here, the Dallas club, because I knew 0 people, and did that whole thing, helped out with all the events, became president of the club. And I learned a lot and had a lot of fun. But as part of like my good steward of time, I always have these like 5, 10, 20-year plans, and they're very, very specific. And there's these big goals that I'm always striving towards, because you don't know the path, but you got to know the goal. And that's what pushes you through the adversities. So a big goal for me always has been to be involved with the university, but you got to get deeper than that. You got to get very specific. So my goal has always been to come back to Maze and eventually get on one of the boards. There's various boards, you can do a lot of stuff, and eventually hopefully be an adjunct professor in entrepreneurship to inspire and teach young kids that want to be entrepreneurs. And then eventually, before I go, do some kind of grant back to Maze. But so really excited now that I'm kind of have some more time on my hands to get more involved with the McFerrin Center, however that might be, and jump from the association to Maze and continue my giving back Aggie journey that I really, really enjoyed with the association.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrific. Love it. Now, how can our Victory Groove listeners keep in touch with you?
LinkedIn is probably best. Since I'm in sales, like I live and die by LinkedIn. So it always has the current projects that I'm working on, has a good contact thing for me. So I highly welcome anybody that's an entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur, or whatever. You want to chat about whatever, I'm always open to chatting with other Aggies. After the Maze Masterclass that I did, I had a lot of very interesting conversations with both current students, former students that just reached out to me. They found me on LinkedIn, and then a few of them even updated me later, and they're like, "Oh, I did this that you told me," and it was a lot of fun. So I was open to connecting with other Aggies, and you can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily.
Great. Thank you. Ben, any closing questions?
No, I just wanted to say thanks to both of you for letting me be a part of this journey with you today. And sitting in the room for conversations like this is such a pleasure. I love hearing the new insights and the little nuggets and things that are different from, for me than they are for another entrepreneur, another business person, another student of business and human behavior.
Yeah.
So
Thank you both. Again, that's Ben with Podcast Architects. He's an entrepreneur too, just an incredible guy. Henry, we are really, really thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This is all about overcoming adversity. That's what Victory Groove is all about. And Victory Groove is really, when you think about it, we already have the victory by faith. We just need to get our groove back. That's what this is all about. And Henry, you have such a great testimony. I mean, really facing something that's could be devastating, but you turned it into something very positive, and you're blessing others too. So God bless you, my brother. God bless you.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Everyone, thank you for listening. This is Victory Groove, and hopefully you'll join us next time.